welcome to Agric Academy on ARSN Television, Abuja, Nigeria. I am Khadija Oluwatoyin. This week we shall take a look at the minimum wage effect of purchasing power on citizens. And to discuss this with us is our in-house economist, Mr. Advert. Before bringing him on, we'll go on a short break, and when we return, he'll be with us. Stay tuned. Purchasing power is the value of a currency expressed in terms of the number of goods or services that one unit of money can exchange for goods and services. These can weaken over time due to inflation. Rising prices effectively decreases the number of goods or services that one unit of money can buy. However, the purchasing power of wages is the quantity of goods and services that can be bought with a wage unit. Its evolution is linked to that of prices and salaries. The purchasing power of the federal minimum wage has been fluctuating. It was highest in February 1968 at $1.60 per hour. The real value of the federal minimum wage in 2022 has decreased by 46% since its inflation-adjusted peak in February 1968. A U.S. study shows that for every 10% increase in the minimum wage, prices increase by 0.36%. The study also found that minimum wage increase lead to increased employment in low-wage labor markets. A rise in the minimum wage predominantly benefits low-wage workers, precisely those most likely to pay additional income directly back to the economy. Does this affect our farmers? Let's hear from our guests. Welcome back. The program is Agric Economy on ARSN Television, and like I said, this week is going to be on minimum wage and its effects on purchasing power of citizens. This, of course, would encompass the buying power as regards food items, goods and services as it relates to the Nigerian economy. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, the federal government has last week approved a 70,000 naira minimum wage for Nigerian workers. How do you feel about it? Your reaction first?
Yeah, it's a good step in the right direction, but it could be better. But looking at our economy and looking at the statistics, it could not really take the workers far as it would have been expected. Had it been we're operating in a very buoyant economy, we should have been talking about a realistic minimum wage that should be within the region of $100 for every worker as a minimum wage in Nigeria presently, because we know the depreciating value of the naira. Because when we are talking about $100 minimum wage now, we are talking about 150,000 for every worker. But as it is, the finances of the federal government will not be able to cope with such a minimum wage, looking at other needs that are begging to be met, infrastructural, fiscal, and the others. So that is why even at the 70,000 minimum wage, it's still a step forward. And with the government's plan of ensuring that it is negotiated every 3 years, also makes it a bit more acceptable to the populace or to the working class. We know that there are several challenges that is going to come going forward as regards this minimum wage, because we know that in as much as the federal government can have or might have the capacity to pay the 70,000 minimum wage, it is going to be a lot of challenge in states, apart from some few states that have the capacity to pay. So those states that struggle to even pay the old minimum wage of 30,000 might find it difficult or deliberately not want to pay the 70,000 minimum wage, which takes us back to square one. So it's a good development that the federal government has instituted it, and is binding on all, both private and public sector. But how far it's going to go will depend on how government encourages all sectors, all stakeholders to ensure that this minimum wage is implemented and is effective.
Okay, we know that one major aim for the increment is because of the buying power.
Yes.
We know that still goes back to the prices of items in
Yes.
the market, prices of goods and services, and the rest of it. So far, do you think this would, cushion some of these effects?
Actually, I'm not positive in that regard. If you go back to history, you will see that increases in national minimum wage in Nigeria has always led to a corresponding increase in food prices. And this has been tested over the years. And even the last minimum wage that was instituted about 8 years ago met with corresponding increase in food prices. And I believe that this present one will not be an exception. And so that is why when the negotiation was going on, I believe that even marketers of products, especially food products, are already gearing up to make increases one way or the other to the prices of their products, just because the federal government has decided to increase the minimum wage. But one thing that we need to also know is that the minimum wage is restricted to the federal, state and local government workers, as well as the employed, reasonably employed in the private sector. And when you look at the population of employed Nigerians, if we are saying that unemployment is going at a rate of 40-something%, the population of employed Nigerians, that we can say gainfully employed Nigerians, that is federal, state, local government and private sector that have more than 5 workers, then they are just about 20-something% of the population. So when you, because of a benefit that goes to 20-something% of the population, increase the price of products that 100% of the population participate in, then you know that we are in for a challenge. So in as much as the government is looking at the purchasing power of its workers, private sector needs to do something about theirs. What happens to those that are artisans, happens to self-employed, happens to those that are even unemployed? That means the challenge is still going to be where we are. So in as much as I encourage, because it's done everywhere in the world, that minimum wage should be set in a way that it will make workers to feel that they can still earn a living wage, we also must look at the side effects. With the side effect, just like you mentioned, is the rise in price and reduction in the purchasing power of the people. We know that when the minimum wage was increased to 30,000 then, about 8 years ago, it could purchase like 2 bags of rice. But presently, even this 70,000 minimum wage will struggle to purchase a bag of rice, if that is possible. So now, looking at what has happened then and what is happening now, we know that it is just a ritual that needs to be carried out so that workers can feel compensated and also be able to move forward in the midst of the biting hardship on the people, on the general populace. So I do not see it as improving the purchasing power of the people, because about 80% or 70% of the Nigerian population will still need to grapple with where their position they are in presently. So when the prices of commodities, food products, goods and services are increased, and the corresponding capacity of this 75% that I'm talking about remains static, then we are still in square one. The challenge still remains. And even those that are going to benefit from the minimum wage are going to meet high cost of products in the market, which might erode as well their purchasing power. So at the end of the day, the economy needs to be stimulated to the extent that it will be able to offer opportunities for growth and capacity building, so that everyone that is having something to do will be able to meet up with the day-to-day sustainability as it is done in other civilized climes.
So how do we go about this? How do governments...
Yes, it's one side good that the government has increased the minimum wage, but the government must ensure and make deliberate plans for increased productivity in the economy. How can we increase productivity in the economy? The Marshall Plan for Agricultural Revolution must be on the front burner. Get more people engaged in productive sector, get the manufacturing sector and all the sectors that make the economy tick to be active and working. And these measures is not far-fetched. The government has said there are loan facilities for SMEs and companies. These loan facilities should be disbursed. It's a good thing that the government has started implementing the student loan, which will help indigent students that their family might not have the capacity to be able to be in school, and also relieve them. But there must be productivity in the economy to the extent that everyone will be involved and everyone can be able to have a take-home to meet up with the challenges of rising prices. So if government does not ensure that there is productivity, because what we have presently that the government is trying to resolve is a reduced productivity based on the various policies from CBN and from the harsh economic environment that has made some big manufacturing companies and conglomerates to exit Nigeria. But if the ease of doing business is improved in Nigeria and the government injects enough energy into production, especially agriculture, mining, energy sector, oil and gas, and we are producing in full throttle, everyone will feel the effect. And when the effect is felt, everyone will be able to benefit, despite the despite the fact that prices are increasing. Let me give you an example. In United States, in Canada, in the United Kingdom, prices are increasing as well. But the national minimum wage is aimed towards continuous assessment of the earnings of workers, and also welfare measures are also being increased to be able to meet the goods and services and standards that needs to be met. So the government has a holistic approach in ensuring that even as the minimum wage is increasing, to meet up with the needs of goods and services, social welfare packages and other things that will make the economy tick is also in the front burner to ensure that this does not affect the others that are not in the employment of the government. That is what Nigerian government also needs to do. We must not neglect the over 70% of the population that do not earn from the federal government, local or state or public sector. So we must make sure we put plans in place to make them to increase their capacity to be able to meet the rising cost of goods and services in the economy. So these are the issues that the government needs to look at to ensure that the minimum wage will not erode every other things that the government is planning.
Okay, we've always had issues with the private sector telling you that government doesn't pay their bills, government they pay their this and that. Talking about the big private companies now. Is there a way that government should be able to bind them in ensuring that these workers working for them are able to get this? If at all, if you say, okay, your flat salary is just going to be that 70,000 naira. Because we know that the issues most we have with the private sector is compliance.
Yes.
To this thing. What do you think can be done?
The government does not have much role to play in compliance. And I say this with all sense of responsibility, to the extent that we have associations that workers in Nigeria are affiliated to, both public and private sector. They are saddled with the responsibility to ensure compliance from all sectors, both state, federal, local, and private sector. And that's why we have the Nigerian Labour Congress, we have the Trade Union Congress, and all their other affiliate members to ensure compliance, which I believe they will try to implement. We know the challenges that the private sector is facing, and that is why government needs to be circumspect in the area of enforcing directly the minimum wage on them. Because when you enforce directly the minimum wage, it can have a negative effect on unemployment. It can increase unemployment, because if a company cannot cope with the wage bill, what it does is to downsize. And when they downsize, more people will be thrown into the unemployment market. And the government does not want this to happen. So they must tread softly with private sector that they do not have control over. So that is one aspect that we have to look at. The other aspect that we have to look at is to ensure that when the private sector when this minimum wage is negotiated, the private sector needs also to be brought in the picture. When I say brought into the picture, yes, you want to force me as a private sector that I have my plans, I have my projections to meet your own demands. What are you giving me in return? So the government must be able to provide waivers in one area or the other to cushion the effect of the wage burden on the private sector to the extent that they will be able to cope with the new minimum wage. So it's going to be a win-win situation if the government also considers the burden is going to be on the private sector and ensures that one way or the other it is cushioned so that they will be able to have resources to be able to meet up with the minimum wage. So the government has a lot to do in these regards.
Okay, yes, we've heard it. Government really has so much to be done in ensuring that the buying power correlates with the just increased minimum wage. Quickly, we'll take a break. When we return, the program continues. Stay tuned.
The Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria (ARCN) coordinates the activities of research institutes and is responsible for supervision, regulation, coordination of research activities and programs of higher institutions in Nigeria. And Professor Hamidu Shaributu, since assumption as Executive Secretary of ARCN in April 2020, has solidified the transformation of agriculture in Nigeria through strategic and meaningful execution of research findings for improvement of the agricultural sector.
For grains, we have the parabolic solar dryers. These are specialized solar dryers used for drying agricultural produce such as whole grains, yam and cassava chips, fruits and vegetables more efficiently. It is made of a special material that concentrates the rays of the sun within the enclosure while eliminating harmful ultraviolet radiation. Products dried are free from contaminants and are hygienic.
The parabolic shaped solar dryer is a need-based technology because virtually when we travel all over the country, you will see by the roadside, you see people drying all sorts of agricultural produce. Some spread their own on bare ground, and by the time the vehicles are moving, the dust stay on the products. The reptiles will come, they will eat whatever they can eat, drop their feces and their urine on it, and the owner comes in the evening to pack everything together and still eat that product, and the product has been contaminated, and we feel this is not right, and it is part of our mandate to make sure that we set it right, and that was what led to this, so that we can solve this problem at the grassroots level. Instead of drying by the roadside, drying on just bare ground in their villages, when they have this as a drying center, everybody in the community can bring their product there, spread on the tray, and they get it dry under hygienic condition that is covered. And the dryer also have another property to screen the ultraviolet ray of the sun, which is also can cause hazard to human health.
Since then, Professor Shaributu has operated as visionary captain by restoring the council's glory with the first ever agricultural television and radio station in Nigeria, with well-equipped studios parading state-of-the-art equipment.
The Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria also has a brand new electronic library to further promote research and visualizations of deep thoughts on agricultural development in Nigeria.
The museum, located in the Senator Abdullahi Adamu Center, is an agricultural museum saddled with the responsibility of keeping records of agricultural findings, discoveries, researches for continuity and history purposes.
ARCN,
promoting agriculture.
Welcome back. It's still the program Agric Economy and ARCN Television, and we're talking about the minimum wage and purchasing power effect on the citizens. Now, so much you said, we highlighted so much, as regards this, but how would this be, is this not going to be so much effect on the economy? Looking at the fact that we said government has so much on its plate now that demands.
Yes. Yes, it's going to have effect on the economy, and that's why you see that a supplementary budget was sent to the National Assembly to accommodate the new minimum wage. And the wage bill of the federal, state, and local government is enormous. And when you put it side by side with the other competing needs of the economy, you see that the government needs to, earn more to be able to meet up. It's just, for example, like a man that has one wife and 3 children and now decides to go and marry another wife, knowing that the other wife too is entitled to have children. So the man must double his hustle. That is, if he's earning a certain amount before, he must make sure that he's looking for other ways and means to increase his earning to be able to meet his newfound family needs. And that is what applies to the government of Nigeria, both state, local government. They must be able to earn more to be able to meet with these needs that are coming up. And it's going to mean the area of taxation, the area of innovation, to ensure that more resources come to the federal government. This present federal government has been innovative enough because we have started seeing earnings from even mining. The gold bars are now being purchased. The federal government now have started owning gold bars from the local mining activities. The government is looking at taxing forex transactions or forex profits of banks, which has not been done before, that the banks have been enjoying. The government is looking at other areas of increasing its revenue by deepening its participation in the offshore and onshore of the oil and gas sector. The government is also looking at improving its revenue generation in the gas business, which the government in Nigeria has gas reserves that can last for over a number of years. You understand? So these measures is to ensure that the government continue to generate revenue to meet up with this need, so that payment of minimum wage will not affect other sectors of the economy. But if you look at Nigeria presently, you discover that even with this new bill that has been passed by the National Assembly, supplementary bill to accommodate the minimum wage, the government is still going cap in hand to borrow to add to it. And you know that when you borrow, you must have the mind to pay back. So it brings a lot of pressure on the government to be innovative enough to be able to pay the service, the loans that are being accumulated based on the need to meet up with other infrastructural responsibility, and still be able to meet the needs of a monthly wage bill and other ancillary demands. So you see that the government needs to be innovative enough to ensure that it increases its revenue on all areas and ensure that the economy is up and running, because it is when the economy is running that the government can anticipate revenue. So the economy must be up and running to be able to give the government the desired revenue that it requires in the area of taxes and other levies as well.
Yes, so much has been said as regards government looking for other alternative, which I guess already highlighted the area of oil and gas, areas of forex, taxation, the mining sector, which is already yielding results. in ensuring that money is coming, so that this minimum wage can be met. So it is hopeful that this has come to stay, and there's going to be, should I say, promotional or provisional, where government will also look at when this minimum wage is not doing, justice to what it's ought to do. They're able to increase just like every other economies of the world.
Periodic review.
Yes, so that there can be periodic review. Because if you look at it, this purchasing power, beg your pardon, still boils down to what the stomach wants. Boils down to food items, boils down to goods and services. And we are hopeful that Nigeria, of course, will be great again. On this note, we wrap it up on the program for this week. Thank you for joining us on the program, Sam.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope you've learned one or two from this week's episode. Don't forget to join us on our social media handles, on ARSN TV and radio, on YouTube. Follow us, subscribe, and you'll be getting notifications as we drop new episodes of the program. I remain your host, Khadija Uluwatoyin, and I'm saying bye for now.